And that's things that I would change, you know. I would make sure that I was there in school every day, at the reading classes, at comprehension classes, at, you know, wherever I needed to be to get my grades up and my reading up, you know, I would be there.
It was available to you.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It definitely was. Like I said, choices and then my consequences. And then, you know, that's the direction that I went in. The choices that I choose, then I choose the consequences. And the consequences, that was the consequences and the decisions that I made. And I had to live with that.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on Literacy Journeys with Linda. My special guest today is Mr. Milton Rucker. He's out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I wanted to talk with him today because he has a very special story to tell about his literacy journey from being a federal prison inmate. And I want him to tell us all about that. Hi, Milton. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, how you doing today? Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I have been so excited to talk to you because there is so much information, research out there that says some pretty dismal statistics about prison inmates. And I wanted to hear your story about whether maybe some of these things are true for you or maybe they're not. One of the things we know is that about 70% of prison inmates struggle with reading, that they're functionally illiterate. So I want you to talk about that in your experience. And another important thing is that when inmates get tutored while they're in prison, help with their reading, that 16% of them don't go back to prison because they've gotten that help. But if they don't get any help while they're in prison with their reading and literacy, about 70% of them will go back into prison. So based on these things, I want to get some information about you, if any of that relates to you.
Yeah, well, in my journey, as you know, being incarcerated, getting into trouble, I had a problem, a learning disability. But at the time, you know, like, you know, now they kind of know what it is, ADHD, things of that nature. Well, they didn't know what that was back then. You know.
So what age are we talking about when you had this?
When I was growing up, probably 13, 14, you know, because I was in and out of trouble from 14 to 13 to pretty much basically almost all the rest of my life until up to now. So, you know, and I was reading at a reading level at about probably 2nd or 3rd grade.
When you were a teenager?
And I'm 12, yeah. And I'm 12, 13 years old. So my reading level, you know, I wasn't really interested in reading, you know, I was more in the lines of watching my earlier peers, you know, people that were older than me, you know, watching the movies, watching this and that. So that was my learning thing, to watch other people, watch what they were doing and see if I could mimic them or copy them and make a life out of that. So
and
my
what did
reading,
you see them doing?
You know, just illegal things, you know, some people were, you know, hustling, robbing, some people were selling drugs, some people, you know, just literally, basically the things that they weren't supposed to be on. So basically that's what that was, you know what I'm saying? So when I began to struggle after being, you know, around them and stuff, and they always told me, go, man, be in school, go to school. But I wanted to hang out and do what I wanted to do, thinking that I was grown a man in that situation. So I skipped school, didn't show up for school. Some classes I'd be there, some I wouldn't. The ones that I liked, you know, like I like, you know, making things, you know, so I go to crafts, I go to engineering, you know, where we do with cooking. I love cooking. So, you know, we had cooking classes, we had engineering classes, basically, you know, putting model planes together, things of that nature. So anything that didn't have nothing to do with reading, and I could just look and I could put the pieces together like a puzzle, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't think I needed reading to do, you know, to make it, you know, in life. So And so when I was getting earlier on, when I was getting older and older, you know, I knew that I was having difficulty.
Did you graduate from high school?
No, I didn't. No, I could have graduated from high school, but I didn't. Yep, I left at 11th grade. I got into some really real major trouble. I ended up getting into some major trouble with the federal government. I was supposed to graduate in 90, but I didn't graduate. I didn't get my GED until like 94. So I did get my GED.
So let's go back, Milton.
Okay.
Because there's just so many young people who drop out of high school. What would you say is the reason that, I mean, you're 11th grade, just one more year, but you decided to drop out? Why?
I don't know. I just made a bad mistake. You know, it's all about choices and decisions. You gotta make the right choices and decisions for yourself. And I completely made a fool of myself. It wasn't the right choices and none of the decisions. And I can't blame it on my father. I can't blame it on nothing but me, you know, and what I seen and what I grew up in. My mother was my inspiration. She did everything right, and she's still doing everything right. So, I mean, I don't know. I just really don't know why I choose that. I guess maybe because I thought it might be easier to run the streets and do that and become a man, you know, because back then, you know, the influences, the you know, your social peers, to be acceptance, you know, things of that nature, that was a big part of a lot of you know, being in school. But
you said you had people telling you, you know, go to school, stay in school. But you listened to some of the other.
I also had other people telling me the opposite. And those were the people that I was listening to. Those were my friends.
Oh.
You know, the more I hung out on the street, the hustlers was like, this ain't what you want. This is not how you want to live your life. You know what I'm saying? You ain't ready for this, you know. And you know, they had, you know, so it was like either go back to school or hustle. So I choose the latter. I ended up going to hustle. So I didn't go back to school.
So Milton, you did something. Let's take us up to your incarceration. At what age did you get incarcerated?
Well, the first time I got incarcerated in juvenile. I ended up catching a drug case. Juvenile detention. I ended up catching it was 3 of us in the car, and I ended up catching a drug case. They weren't my drugs, but I didn't say anything. You know, there was a code on the streets. You don't tell, you don't say nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I ended up going to jail. I did 9 months.
9 months.
9 months as a juvenile. This is before. I was still in high school at the time, but this was before I actually caught my federal case.
Okay.
You know,
tell me about any of your literacy experiences in juvenile detention.
Yeah, I had to go to school. We had to go to school. There was the way they set it up is for order you to earn points, it was like a point system.
Okay.
So we could go home on the weekends.
Okay.
And then we had to come back that Sunday night. So Friday night we could leave and go home and spend 2 nights there. And then Sunday night we had to be back at a certain time. Okay, so there's a point system. You got to go to school. You got to earn these points. It's like 3s and 4s. If you earn 3s and 4s all through the week, then you can go home.
Okay.
But it was like the point, it added up to a certain amount of points.
What's an example of how you could earn a point?
Just getting, you know, they give you like worksheet books. So you have to do the worksheet books.
Okay.
And then they'll grade it. And if it's, you know, you'll end up getting like a D. I think D was like a 1 point or something like that.
Okay.
A C was like 3 points.
Okay. So the better your grades, the higher your points.
Yeah, and they all add up. You know, if you got Fs, it took me a while. It took me about a month, 2 months to get up there, but I never really finished my education. I didn't finish my GED there. I was trying to get it, but I didn't finish there.
Okay. So then let's fast forward. You went to prison again. This time you're not in juvenile prison.
No,
You're in the one for adults.
Yeah, I'm an adult. 18 years old. It was a gun case, buying and selling guns, and so I ended up getting 5.5 years, 60 months for that case. So I caught that case, buying and selling guns, over in South Minneapolis. I wasn't too far from, it was within the frame that they could use my juvenile record against me and every other little petty crimes that I got caught with, during that time of being a juvenile, whether it was stealing something under a misdemeanor, or stealing something under $500 or, something like that. Or so I ended up getting in trouble. I did 60 months for that. But at that point in time, back then, they considered guns being a violent offense. So you can't be at a camp having a violent offense. So about maybe 3 months then to my stay, they shipped me out. They shipped me all the way to Inglewood, Colorado. So I ended up going to Inglewood, Colorado, getting on a bus, getting on a plane, and flying to Inglewood, Colorado. And I stayed there for about a year and a half. And then I ended up going to Florence, Colorado. So I got my GED. I'm working landscaping because I like to be out in the sun.
Landscaping where?
Landscaping for the prison. So I was in prison doing landscaping, keeping the land, keeping the grass cut, watered. We all had different type of jobs, industry jobs. You could have worked in the kitchen. You could do landscaping, electrician, drywall, construction. So basically all this stuff, you could get certificates in. At this point in time, you can get certificates in this and you can get college credits towards, if you wanted to continue to do this out in the house. You could be a certified electrician. You could be a certified construction worker. Everything was there for you to learn more and more.
What kind of reading ability did you have to accomplish these things, to be a landscaper, to work in construction?
Landscaping really wasn't basically, there wasn't nothing that, the boss told you pretty much what to do.
Okay.
They tell you what you needed to use at certain days. Go out and cut the grass. So we go out and cut the grass. And this is a lot of land. You talk about Colorado, we're on a mountain. Okay. Prison is built on a mountain. So this is a lot of land. This is a huge compound. So, and you're pushing, what I'm saying? I'm out there from 7:30 in the morning until 4:30, making 25 cents an hour.
25 cents.
25 cents an hour. If you don't got your GED, or if you're not going to school, then you only make 12 cents an hour. Or you're only making $5.25 a month. Yeah. Because if you don't go to school, they put you on a restriction. And restriction is you're guaranteed to get $5.25 a month. So for somebody that doesn't want to go to school and they don't care about it, $5.25 a month, that's how much they get paid, $5.25 a month. Or you can get half of that, 12 cents. If you go to school, you get 12, you get 12 cents.
So Milton, you had a choice. Yeah. What did you choose?
Well, I already got my GED, so I worked. I constantly worked. I had my GED before I left Duluth, Minnesota. Right. And went to Inglewood, Colorado. So, what I did in my spare time is I did landscaping, and then I worked out. I did read. I took books from the library. Tell me about the library. What was it like? In Duluth, they had a big library. Duluth had a big library, nice school setting. Inglewood had a nice library and a big setting too. There's some libraries and some prisons that I went to that they didn't have anything. Just hood books like Donald Goines, Iceberg Slim, the stuff that was basically the stuff that you learned off the street. People that were street people wrote these books. So it was just you're still entertaining the thought of being in the streets by reading this, reading these books, and you're not learning nothing from these books.
Oh, because you already had that experience.
Correct.
They were talking
So it's
about
just, these books are basically just for fun to read, to try to remember the good time that you had when you was in the streets. Basically, that's all these books were. There weren't really no good books. Certain libraries, certain prisons. Inglewood had a nice library. You know, I studied like history. I wanted to know about history. So I started reading about history, about Hitler, about Jews, about my African heritage, about the natives. I wanted to learn everything that was like real. I didn't want to know nothing else about the streets or nothing. I wanted to learn what was real, what was, you know, like a biography, somebody's real true story. So, you know, I did Malcolm X. I read Malcolm X. I wrote.
Or was it easy for you to read these books, Milton, or was it because you said you had pretty much a third grade reading level when you were a teenager? How did you improve?
I didn't hesitate to ask a person what the words were. You know, I had a roommate, so you know, we each had our own like lamp, a little reading light at night. So we had to turn the big light off and we read during the day. So you know, if I had problems sounding words, I would ask my roommate. And if he didn't know them, you know, I had a dictionary, so I try to sound them out. You know, or what I would do is I look at the word, and the dictionary kind of, you know, the dictionary's Webster's kind of explains it a little more. Like, I mean, Webster's easy to read. It's a more dictionary, more easier to read. So I would look at the word and try to find the word in Webster. And I look at Webster and I'll be like, okay, this is the word. So I try to read this. And then I ask my roommate, you know, to give me a definition or how I would use it, like from my understanding or my point of view as, you know, who I am. So he would kind of, you know, he would relate to me because we're in there together and we're more relatable. So he'd tell me, okay, this was the meaning of this word, you know, or this is the meaning of that word, you know. So that's how I got a better understanding. And I just kept that dictionary with me at all times.
Wow. Because Malcolm X, that's a thick book. I mean, you were
it is.
And history books, wow. That's some pretty deep.
And then, you know, from that point on, that made me interested. That got me interested. It kept me, you know, I'd read Malcolm through the night to the day. I'd be tired going to work, but I still, you know, I still be having him on my mind. And then when I have my break or something, I'll be reading under the gazebo, take my little rest, half-hour rest or 45-minute rest under the gazebo on the compound with my push lawnmower and read for a little bit, you know.
Now, did you see other inmates who had the same reading habits like you did?
Yeah, well, a lot of inmates, they would get books sent in, magazines, things, you know, books that they were interested in, magazines, new books that came out, you know. A lot of people, they would read like the Times, they get the Times, you know, like USA Today, you know, newspapers and stuff like from home. You know, there's some people that'll get Star and Tribune or St. Louis paper, Pioneer Press. They get, you know, they're wherever they were from, whatever city and state they were from, they would get those papers. So I would read the newspapers. They would help me read them. They told me about stock market, stuff like that. So I learned, you know, I learned from anybody and everybody about the stock market and how it worked, and, you know, different things, different avenues that they could give me. You know, that was pretty much my learning. I learned from everybody.
Now, you told me something very important about what you started studying, and that is the law. Tell me about that, how you studied law books.
In 2011, I robbed an FBI agent. I got in trouble and I ended up robbing an FBI agent. I ended up taking his gun, his badge, and his credentials. I ended up getting a 20-year sentence for that in 2011. 2016, I ended up getting my case overturned. But from that point, from 2011 to 2016, I ended up studying law. I ended up just going into the law library, asking anybody and everybody about how do I start to study law, or how do I proceed to help myself in my case. And people helped me. They showed me. So I listened, I studied. There's a dictionary called the Black Law Dictionary. That's the dictionary that is a terminology for all lawyers to use.
Absolutely. I have that because I went to law school, so I have that thick blue book. That is not an easy book, Milton.
No, that's not an easy book, and you have to understand it. And my thing was, I made everything personal. So when I actually started doing my law work, I was like making everything personal, writing everything personal. So I was wondering why I was getting denied. And then I understood the way I was reading my paperwork, I wasn't putting it in. You have to read it like you're the third person. Like you're reading, like you're a third person. That's how you have to read it. So instead of you saying I, you have to make it like, well, then Mr. Rucker said such and such, or you have to state it like you're talking in a third person type. So that, and I made it personal. So that's why I was getting denied. Because I was always saying I, me, and I wasn't doing it the correct way. So, and that's where I failed. 2.5 years. I put my last appeal in 2015, and it was my last one on my daughter's birthday. I put it in, and they answered it like within 2 or 3 weeks, and they replied, and the government replied and sent me something, and it was just like, it was wonderful. It was a breath fresh air.
So what was the outcome? What was the outcome?
The outcome was, instead of 20 years, I got 10.5 years. So when I started seeing my traits, or I started seeing things that I started slipping back into, what I would do is, okay, now I'm using modification, or I'm using self-gratification. If I go do this, and I could go do this real quick and make this money over here real quick, and then I don't never have to do that again. No, that's criminal thinking. Don't nobody in the real world think criminal thinking. But and so that was my thing. And that's where I started out at. Like I told you, young, I was criminally thinking. That was my criminal thinking. That's why I wanted to be out there in the streets, because that's my criminal thinking. I was getting criminal thinking. Don't nobody think like that.
And you started at a young age having criminal mindset.
Criminally minded. And that was what that was. I'm seeing over here, and I'm watching these movies. I'm seeing dude over here selling drugs, or I'm watching these movies where they're selling drugs or getting away. The criminal is the good guy, but that's the criminal thinking mind. But in the real world, people don't think like the criminal mind. The criminal mind is not there. When you start out a baby, you don't think criminal. Even when you're 5 years old and you grab a piece of bubble gum and you walk out the store with it in your hand, and then next thing you know, you're chewing it, and your mom says, "Where did you get that from?" And you're like, "Oh, I got it from the store." "Oh, you stole it?" And you're like, "I ain't steal it. I just got it from the store." That's criminal thinking, because you grab that gum or you grab that piece of candy and you walk out that store and you got away with it at 5 years old. But the man at the cash register didn't even see you.
So the criminal thinking is something you were taught by hanging around the wrong people.
Correct. Yeah. And that's what gets you in trouble. Your criminal thinking. And you don't have that. You don't have that as a baby coming out of the womb, at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years old. You don't have those things until you first realize that you did something wrong. Like when I was 5 years old and I ran out the store, I walked out the store with my mom, and I grabbed a piece of candy, and I stole that. And literally, she's like, "You stole that candy. You can't do that. You have to buy that." You know what I'm saying? But in my mind, I'm like, well, it was there. I just, I didn't think it was gonna, I'm a little kid. I don't know no better. But that starts with your criminal thinking. Now I done stole this piece of candy. Now I can go back. Now I'm 6 years old, or I'm 7 or 8 years old. I can go back and I can steal me some more candy. Now I'm thinking criminal. You don't have those thinkings until you get exposed to it.
So tell me, because it sounds like you were a smart guy as a young child. You had a lot of potential, and you just took it in the wrong direction.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. I took it in the wrong direction. And what I know now, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would, but I can't.
What would you change if you were Like you
But
said,
I can
12,
do.
13, what would you change?
I would change everything. I mean, if I could go back in history right now, I would rewrite my whole history. You know, as far as my criminal activity and my reading and literacy, I'd have graduated on time. Yep, I would have graduated on time. I probably would have. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to study law.
Oh, you did?
I mean, I was interested in studying law. I wanted to be a lawyer. At one point in my life, I wanted to be a lawyer. Because I watched TV and I seen that they made good money. They wore nice suits, just like the dope dealers, nice watches, suits, when they were always suited and booted, they had money, saying it was, that was just but they did it right. They did it the right way by learning. I mean, I did it the wrong way and it always caught up to me, The revolving door always caught up to me. So it was like, and that's things that I would change. I would make sure that I was there in school every day, at the reading classes, at comprehension classes, at, wherever I needed to be to get my grades up and my reading up, I would be there.
And that was available. It was available to you.
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. But I choose like I said, choices and then my consequences. And then, that's the direction that I went in. The choices that I choose, then I choose the consequences. And the consequences, that was the consequences and the decisions that I made. And I had to live with that. And I've been living with that since 16. I'm 48 now. I'll be 49 in October. So, I mean, I've been out a year. I've been working and, I love work,
Well, it sounds like a happy ending.
Yeah.
Sounds like you have a good future. What are you looking forward to? What are some of your goals for, let's say you live another 50 years, you're 48, you can live another 50 years. What are you looking forward to, Milton?
Well, I'm looking forward, I got a grandson, but I'm looking forward to just, life and whatever life it brings me. God's been good to me. I've been praying. I'm a prayerful man. I fear the Lord, and I know I couldn't do it without him because I wouldn't be here talking to you today. If it wasn't.
Are you going to keep up your reading habits?
Oh yeah, most definitely. What I learned in prison this last time, I also want to teach. You know what I'm saying? I want to be an advocate for illiteracy, and I want to be an advocate for people that are also getting ready to be in that area of 16, 17, their first felonies or their first misdemeanor or their first gross misdemeanor. Before they act, I wanted to give them my story and tell them this is how I went down the road. It may not be for you, but you have a choice, you have decisions, and you have consequences. So when you make them choices and you decide to live with them decisions of the choices that you made, then you got to deal with the consequences that come behind it. You could have a good outcome or you can have a bad outcome. And you could be in prison for numerous of years, or you could be in and out of prison for numerous of years, or you can go to prison one time and get it the first time and then make something of yourself, but you still have that one strike against you. Or you can say, never mind that strike, let me just do it the right way here, now, and live my life to the fullest, and then get everything that you deserve by the grace of God. And then you would have that self-gratification that you did it yourself the right way, not the wrong way.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you talking to me, Milton. And
thank you for having me again.
You've got a really bright future ahead of you. You don't ever see yourself going to prison again, do you?
No.
You're done with that.
No. I can say that with an absolute no. No.
You're done with that, and you don't want anybody else to go either. It sounds like.
If I can help somebody, young, old, I mean, I can just tell them my story, and they can believe it or not, But I'm telling you, man, I'll tell them it's not worth it. It's not. It's not worth your life. It's not worth your family. Your family is going through the same thing you go through. You're not there. They're struggling. Everybody's struggling. Everybody's stressed. You're bringing your family through an incarceration that they don't have to go. They're not in jail, but you're putting your family in jail with you.
Oh.
And that's stress. That's stress on top of stress. That's too much.
Yeah.
I'd rather not, I'd rather just say no to criminal activity, no to drugs, no to everything, and not bring my family through that. That's a stress that I'll never want to bring my family through that.
Wow.
And not myself.
That's great.
It's too hard for them.
That's
They're in a cocoon just like you are.
mm.
They they don't stop living their life out here, but when you call, you call home, you ask for money. You call home, you ask for the certain things, and this is the only foundation or support you have is your mother, your brother, or your cousin, your sister, your girlfriend done left, or your wife done left, and you got your kids are all sporadically somewhere. You don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's too hard. That's stress.
And it's so interesting that you realize it all could have been different if you
It
had
all could have been. It could have been
had
prevented if I had stayed in school, did what I was told, and just did everything the right way, like I was told.
That's okay. You got a bright future now, and so I thank you so much for joining me, ladies.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You have been listening to Mr. Milton Rucker out of Minnesota, telling us about his literacy journey through his incarceration. So if you enjoy these interviews, please hit that subscribe button for Literacy Journeys with Linda, and I will see you next time on Literacy Journeys with Linda. Thank you so much, Mr. Milton.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, Linda.